Thank you very much, Race. Ni hao, hogenshin renshin yi. That's it. That's all you get. Yeah, so I think this is a very exciting time, as you know, you've seen in the videos leading up to this conference. My journey with visionOS started about 8 months ago, and I've been working with it ever since. You know, I had an opportunity to get hired as a visionOS engineer, and my journey to Beijing started December 15th. I mean, so I've been working on this for quite a while. It's a phenomenal piece of hardware, and I think that, you know, I don't think it's any surprise because you guys are here, you believe the same thing. And so I'm going to share some of my experience with it over the years. So I'm trying to advance. Does this work? You just push the middle button? Okay, I'll use my keyboard, it's okay. All right, so first question I have, can you keep a secret? Oh, there's the secrets revealed. So we have 5 chances for you to win 1 month subscription. I'm a writer, tech writer, and editor at Codico, as Race mentioned. And so we've brought 5 free months for one of you to win. I think Frank and those guys are going to figure out the details on how to enter or win that. As well, we're offering also 20% off a brand new visionOS bootcamp, which is being announced tomorrow, which is why I said, can you keep your secret? Wow. So I thought it was already in the open, but apparently they're going to announce it tomorrow. So that's sort of the first piece about this. So, oh, hang on. Yes, no, sorry, I missed my own slide. So, for me, I mean, the rumor was coming up to WWDC that Apple was going to introduce some sort of VR, AR equipment, and we're all anticipating what that was going to be. So I do a podcast on mobile development, and I had a number of people on, and one of the people I had on, so before we get there, we all, within a couple of days of, not loud enough?
Yeah, better use it.
Okay, all right. Within a couple of days of, like a week later, after the SDK dropped, there was a version that came out that had the visionOS SDK. And so many of us, like myself, we opened up our apps, we opened up Xcode, and we started seeing how hard it would be to get the app changed over. This is my app from 2010. It's written in Objective-C with UIKit, so really, really old code, and it took me no time to get it on visionOS. So, hey, I'm a visionOS developer, right? Everybody said that. So, going a bit forward, I had a chance I got an email from Apple saying, you know, that you could come to the developer lab and try. So it felt like a lottery. It's a friend of mine who lives in Russia says when you see a line, you just get in the line, and then you worry about what the line is for later, right? So we all, as engineers, we do this. Apple's been having these lotteries for years. And so I tried that, and unfortunately, I ended up in a position where my employment ended, and I had already bought the ticket, and I got selected to go. And so I said to my wife, what do I do? And she said, go. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You know, who knows where this is going to go, and you should go there. So going back to the podcast, I had interviewed a bunch of people on the podcast, and I spoke to Daniel Steinberg just before WWDC, and we were both saying, well, we're both gray-haired guys, we're old, this is a young, you know, VR, gaming is for the young folks, right? And so we didn't see that there would be any reason for us to get involved in this thing. And so he said on the show, I hope that Apple doesn't spend all the time on this new piece of hardware. You know, like hopefully they have something else for us. Thankfully, they did have Swift data, so that was great too. And so we went into this with a little bit of skepticism. So I went there thinking, okay, well, how good can this be? I mean, maybe it's going to have. I went with a skeptical mindset. You know, I'm going to go see what it's like. Maybe, you know, it has some future or whatever. And of course, you know, you spend 5 hours with the device if you go to Developer Lab, right? And you bring your own computer, you bring your own code, you prepare for it. And I got to tell you, I was blown away. Like, I came out of that thing thinking this is totally where I'm going to go with this, right? So I had read that, what's his name? Michael Smith had David Smith, sorry, had done an article. He was interviewed by the developer group that he prepared a list of what he was going to test. So I thought, hey, that's a good idea. So I brought my device tracker app, which you saw a minute ago. I brought one of my other apps, which have all the accessibility turned on, like Christian was talking about yesterday. And I made some Reality Composer Pro things, and I made other apps to test. I made a 14-foot shark and had it circling around me, which was just amazing, like to see this thing around there. But I had done a painting in university here, which was sort of a sci-fi theme, with cubes floating in the air and that kind of stuff. So this is going back to like the 90s, right? And the computer in the middle is just for another thing I was talking about. But over there you can see I built an app in Reality Composer Pro, and I made these 1 meter cubes. I guess they were 10 centimeter cubes, right? And I colored them the same way, and I put them in the thing. And I thought, okay, well, I just had that in the back of my hand in case I thought I would run this. And during, like, maybe the last hour, I meant, oh, I forgot about to run my Space Cubes app, right? So I ran this thing, and I'm telling you, my jaw dropped. To see this thing 7 feet wide, 10 feet high, I put the battery in my pocket, I unplugged all the cables, because you have all these extra cables as a developer, and I walked around the room, and I just, like, I couldn't stop smiling. It was so amazing to see this in like real life. And one of the things about visionOS, if you've worked with it, is that, and I've talked about this with a few people who use this device as well, that when you open a window on visionOS, you think it's really there. Like your brain is thinking, you're convinced that you want to walk through, you feel like you kind of trip or knock into the window. It's so realistic looking. So it's a really good thing. So bottom line, I'm 100% all in, totally. Like, came out of WWDC with that idea. And since I work for, sometimes as a contractor with Codeco, there was a discussion on the Discord thing saying, we're thinking about doing a visionOS. And I went, pick me, pick me. And so I ended up I am the Codeco subject matter expert on visionOS. So I had the opportunity to write the very first introduction to visionOS back in October. So I wrote this course, and in that course I cover, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the code that's in that course as well, but I cover how to build a window app, how to build a volume app, and how to build an immersive app. So it's not like I do one thing or another, I do all three. And it's not a super deep course, it's enough to get you going get your brain thinking about how to build these things. And as well, I just recently finished doing Kit and Reality Composer Pro for like the Beyond the Basics. And then one of the other writers, Audrey Tam, has done designing for iOS and visionOS, and designing for accessibility for visionOS, right? So this is all part wrapped. They just changed the name of the course. They've got now 8 or 9 modules in this thing, and it's now you can become a visionOS specialist by taking this course. And the code is over there to sign up if you want, or try and win the prize, right? So I want to take a step back, and there's been a lot of talk about spatial computing, what it is, and I'm going to show my perspective in a minute. But before we get there, I want to look at a little bit of history, because everybody thinks this is a new technology, this is brand new stuff, right? But you can see that the stereoscope, which was a device that you would take a picture with a left and right image, and you would put it in this little viewer, and you look through it with a board in the middle, so your brain sees one image and one of the other, and you get this stereo thing. That goes back to 1838, right? That's like well over 200 years ago. I can't do the math, it's too early in the morning, right? And then, just shortly after they invented manned flight, in the US, Joe Link, or Ed Link, invented the Link Trainer flight simulator, and this is like 1929. And then you've all seen this. This is the Viewmaster, right? This is like you put the discs in, it's got the Snoopy and Charlie Brown, or you go to Paris, you go to see the Eiffel Tower in 3D. This is going back to 1939. That's how long ago that was invented. And then moving to technology, this gentleman named Morton Helig, he built a Sensorama device which uses mechanics to feed an information into each of your eyes. And then this is the telesphere, and if you look at this is from 1960, right? This looks just like what we're looking at today, whether it's an Oculus or a visionOS. I mean, there's only so much they can do, I guess, right? Sword of Damocles was a VR headset that came out around 1968 as well, and that was all using computer graphics to render images in each eye to give you that same impression. And then, just for completion, the term virtual reality was first coined in 1987, and the term augmented reality was first coined in 1990, right? And then, of course, we have the Nintendo Virtual Boy, which is what it looks like this, and we have the Oculus in 2012, and then Apple and Google both introduced their 3D frameworks in 2017, ARKit, and I think it's called the Google AR Core. I don't know if anybody knows that for sure, but so it's kind of interesting that, you know, I remember when ARKit came out, I've been into 3D for, you know, since I started working on computers, I've been doing 3D stuff, but why Apple, right? And, you know, now that you see where we are with the Vision Pro, why did these technologies exist? It's primarily to make these kind of things. So, Vision Pro, this is my definition. Vision Pro and visionOS are poised to create a paradigm shift in the idea of computing. You've heard many people say that this weekend, right? Spatial computing involves the interacting with elements rendered in front of and around the computer user. So I wrote this as an introduction piece in November for that first course. So for me, this is a assemblage of my current working environment. So this is my desk for the last 4 years, okay? So I got my podcast stuff there, I've got a 27-inch monitor in the middle, I got a 27-inch monitor over there, I've got my Mac on a stand, I have my iPad here, have all my USB junk and whatever. That's what my workspace looks like up until February, right? So I switched over to, now I can basically mirror my screen onto my Vision Pro, and now I've got a 60-inch or 150-centimeter monitor, I don't know how you guys call that, 60-inch or whatever, 4K display. And for me, the magic is a couple of things. One is I can have instruction on the left-hand side, I can have my Xcode in the middle, I have room to open an iPhone simulator and an iPad simulator, so I have everything in front of me just on the one screen. And of course, this goes wherever I go, right? So I have a small puppy dog, so I have to pay attention to her all day long. She sleeps under the table, I sit in the kitchen, and this is my desk basically wherever I am. And then as well, I've also got the visionOS windows. This doesn't really show the full extent, but you know, I've got Safari, and I have a little video app that I can watch my dog sleeping upstairs to see what she's up to and that kind of stuff. And everything's huge and clear. And one of the things about me is I wear multiple pairs of glasses in a day, right? So I have these glasses I'm wearing right now so I can see people in the back of the room, but I can also read my computer in front of me. And then when I want to work on my computer, I have a different pair of glasses I put on, right? One for seeing the computer and one for reading. And then if I'm watching my TV in the basement, I have another pair of glasses. So all day long, I'm changing my glasses every day, right? And one of the things I said in that article that I wrote back in September was, when I put on the Vision Pro, because I've got the inserts for my distance vision and the amazing rendering of this thing, I don't need to change my glasses at all. I can read, I can look at distance, I can watch TV, all that kind of stuff happens with the one headset, which is amazing to me. And also like things like, it's funny with the foveated rendering, you can't really see where I'm focusing, but small type on my Mac monitor is really hard to read, but when it gets expanded to like this 4K display, all of a sudden I can read, and it's an amazing sort of experience. So for me, this is, spatial computing, right? I can have the window open in the kitchen, or I can have the window open in the basement. Yeah, so here's the full screen effect of that, right? So the question comes to me, and this is part of the reason why I wrote this talk, is why I think everybody in this room should be writing visionOS apps, right? The basics are, you know, visionOS, it's the operating system that runs on the Vision Pro, obviously. It's primarily written in SwiftUI, right? You can run UIKit apps with some exceptions. I have one app that uses accelerometer. I can't run that on visionOS. So anything that's pretty much compatible with the iPad OS you can run on here. And so to sell my idea is, okay, let's take a look back at the iPhone. I was around in 2007 when the iPhone came along. I was around before that too, but. And I remember going to conferences like this. This feels just like the conferences I went to back in 2007, 2008, 2009, where everybody's excited about this new platform. All of these things on the screen here, Instagram, Twitter, WeChat, Alipay, Square, Pumpkin Spice Latte, none of this stuff existed before the iPhone came out. So these are all businesses that came from the genesis of the iPhone. So I think that it's a very important and very exciting time because what we're looking at is an opportunity to build the next businesses that nobody's even thought of what they are yet, right? So in preparing the visionOS course, a couple of things you may have gathered from all the different talks we've been doing is a visionOS is pretty deep. This is my mind map that I made for preparing that course material, right? So you've got your window app at the top, you've got your volume app in the middle, you've got your immersive app on the bottom, and then you've got resources, things like Blender, 3D modeling, you've got USDZ files, that kind of thing. So, and if you look at how they break down, you've got Swift UI, you've got UI Kit, you've got whether I'm targeting iPad OS or am I targeting visionOS natively. So a lot of different things. And then you've got Reality Kit and AR Kit and all kinds of other tools. And you've probably seen this slide many times. This is my version of it. But it's pretty simple to say the majority of apps you're going to see out there are going to be window-based apps. Where apps, you've got an iOS app already, you're just going to make a version of it that runs on visionOS. It's going to be pretty flat, pretty boring, right? But you can put that into a volume, right? And when you put you could have like a shopping cart or something like that, and maybe the product booms out into full 3D, and you can rotate it and check it out and that kind of stuff, right? So that's the kind of thing. And then immersive can be a couple of things. You can either change the entire space that the person's looking at, or you can, and dial back that experience with the digital crown, or you can, and you've got pass-through video as well. So you can have a immersive app where you see like everybody in this room as well as my app. And if I have time for my demo, I can show you that at the end. But yeah, so you can do all kinds of different things with this. Oh, and one thing I want to tell is just I'm going to throw a couple of little secrets out here that I've figured out over the time is that the volume app is a 1 meter cube, okay? So if your object is bigger than a meter or grows to bigger than a meter, it gets clipped, right? So when I was doing the course, I used the immersive view to teach because I didn't want my objects to be clipped, right? But what I discovered is that you can add a geometry reader to the volume, because the other thing about visionOS is that you have no control over how big the user wants to make the window. And as Christian was showing yesterday, you have no idea how big the font is going to be or whether it's color corrected or whatever. So you can add a geometry reader so that dynamically as the user grows and shrinks the window, your object will also grow proportionally with the window. So that's a little pro tip for you. So the technologies we're talking about here, this is a slide from Apple, you've got on the one side you have ARKit, right? So you can build your ARKit experiences, you can build your games and stuff like that. And then on the other side you have Reality Kit, right? Reality Kit is kind of the software that Apple uses to dynamically, programmatically render objects in a 3D space. And of course we're using Swift UI primarily, but you can use a UI Kit. If you use UI Kit, you just don't get some of the nice hover effects and things like that, or glass background. Those things are not available at this version of the time. And then you've got all the sort of core stuff underneath Metal. So Metal runs on both Reality Kit, Reality Composer Pro, and on ARKit, but they're kind of like in separate silos at this point in time. And then on the actual device side, you've got, this is the Vision Pro thing. So you've got the iOS frameworks at the top, you've got spatial frameworks for running 3D rendering, light effects, audio, that kind of stuff. And you have your spatial audio engine for audio. And then you've got the foveated rendering, which is what I talked about before. If you don't know what that means, is wherever the person is looking, that's where they put the energy into making sure that's nice and crisp and clear, and the rest of it's all blurry. That saves on battery, it saves on engine, it saves on computing time. And then you've got the Core OS and real-time subsystems running underneath. So that's kind of the structure of the hardware. And then as far as the tools go, some of the talks have talked about one of these tools or two of these tools, but this is sort of the whole environment. You've pretty much got Swift UI is your language. Reality Kit obviously is the structure that runs the 3D rendering. And you can choose ARKit and Metal, of course. And then we're using Apple Xcode 15 with an Apple Silicon. I just want to talk about that for a minute. And Reality Composer Pro is kind of like the easy version of Reality Kit. Reality Kit, you can write your stuff in code, like we saw, I forgot his name now, the Japanese person who spoke yesterday. And then you've got Unity as well as that. So, but coming back to Xcode 15, so if you have an Intel Mac and you're thinking, okay, this is not for me, well, you can't run the simulator. In fact, I don't think you can download you can write the code on an Intel Mac. You just can't run it on the simulator, you can't render it. But the video mirroring you've seen where we're having the big screen and that kind of stuff, that works on Intel too. I have an Intel Mac in my kitchen. If I want to, I can just open it up and mirror to it. So I can use Intel Mac with my Vision Pro if you have the hardware. You can write the code on Intel, but you just can't run the simulators and that kind of stuff. So that's the only limitation behind that. So if you don't know this already, this is kind of the main part of the app. The difference between this and a standard SwiftUI app is you have a window group now, right? And then you can set the style of the window to be plain. If you don't do anything, it goes automatic, or you can decide you want it to be volumetric. Volumetric would be like that shopping cart analogy where I talked about before. You have a flat catalog and you bring the image, the product out so the user can do it. But so you don't technically need Reality Kit at this point in time, unless you go volumetric, right? For an immersive app, things change a little bit. This is the app itself. Here you have to decide how you want the immersion style to be. It's either going to be full or mixed or automatic. If you do full, that means you're going to change all the peripheral vision that the person's using. Like you're going to provide an image, or it's going to be on a black background. If it's mixed, it means you can see the audience, for example, right? And then you set your immersion style, and then here in the orange here, where it says immersion scene, this is an object out of Reality Composer Pro Swift package, because Reality Composer Pro uses Swift packages, that it'll load that particular scene named in my package. So you can have multiple scenes in your package. You can programmatically change between them as well during your app runtime. And then you set your style at the bottom here, and you pass it in through immersive style, which is like a sort of an environmental object. We talked about ornaments a little bit here. This is kind of just a little bit technical bit about it. Like for instance, if I want to add a button that says add job, and I want it to be on the bottom of the screen, I set the bottom over there at the end. And then if I want to have glass background effect, I'm sorry at the back you can't see this, but you can add the glass background effect, and this is how you would affect your ornament that's going to appear on the bottom of your screen. So as I said before, I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but the reality view is a special kind of SwiftUI view, specifically for visionOS, right? And here what I'm doing, I'm passing in my content here in my closure, and then I'm setting the scene up. I'm using async await to load up that scene out of the package. Again, this is the one called immersive scene is the one I'm going to be pulling in here, and I'm going to load that into my scene by using this content.add approach here. And Satoshi, I think is his name, he did it yesterday. He did like root. He had the root view, and he added it to he used a different command to add the scene to that. And then he talked a bit as well about, you have three parts to this closure. You have at the top, it's make closure. It's not named here, but it's assumed by the compiler. And then you've got an update closure. So you set your scene, you put your pieces together on the board, you put them together in the make closure. The update closure is where you do things like animate them or turn them into orbiting objects and that kind of stuff, where you deal with interaction with the user and that kind of stuff. So if you're going to add physics to it, so you want to throw an object, you do that there. And attachments is kind of like a label thing at the bottom where you can attach a label to your object. Maybe it's like a map on a map pin on a map, and you tap on it, it opens up an information screen. That's usually done in the form of an attachment. And then so with immersive scenes, it's a little different. So this is kind of like within the immersive view controller, you have your open immersive environment variable, open immersive scene and dismiss immersive scene. That triggers this warning over here to the user that they're getting involved in something they need to be aware of their environment, because you're going to be hiding things from them. And then you basically use that to open and close the scene. This is sort of the standard closures boilerplate code to do that. This is like a reality view. So you can see the goldfish over here. The thing behind him that says fish, click the button, push me, that's an attachment that's attached to that fish. So as this fish is swimming through the aquarium, this attachment is behind it. It's relative to it, right? You may have seen some of the demos, I think yesterday, where they were showing how to measure with your, and the guy had like a menu on his arm. So the arm would have been attached to the guy's hand, right? And then, so to do a quick loading of a module, an object like the goldfish, you can just use Model 3D and load that in. It's quick, it's simple, but it's not as robust as Reality View. So Reality View, you get the benefit of the make, update, and accessory closer, which I talked about, right? And then you just basically load the entity and away you go. And then whether it comes in from the Reality Kit bundle, content bundle is what the code refers to as the package within Reality, coming out of Reality Composer Pro. So this is the main screen of Reality Composer Pro. It's very similar to other 3D apps that you work with. And we're going to go to the next screen, actually. Oh, before I do that, yeah. So we've got here at the bottom, you would load in USDZ files, like this goldfish is a USDZ file. You can create particle emitters, you can add audio, you can create materials here. There's a thing called shader graph, which I'll show you in a few minutes. Then you've got the systems that come with ECS, which is the entity component and systems. So this is the left-hand side over here. You've got where you list all your ingredients, if you will, right? So in the case of Adam's talk yesterday, he showed the other app. It's very similar. You have the list of items over here. Same thing with Unity. You have a left-hand side. It's like the project navigator in Xcode. You have all your pieces there. And then whenever you have an object selected, you get the benefit of an inspector on the other side where you can set the variable settings for this. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes why the difference between writing Reality Kit code and using Reality Composer Pro. This is a simpler method. This is kind of where Apple is suggesting we go because it's easier. It's more like interface builder in that sense. And in the middle, you have your viewport where you put your pieces on the board, if you will. You set the sizes for them. And up there, you can see a little plus there. There's a whole slew of assets that Apple provides for you in Reality Composer Pro. Spheres and cones and objects, audio files, shading, like colors, materials that you can use to apply to your objects. And then at the bottom, you have your project browser where all your pieces go in. You can organize them into folders and that kind of stuff down there. And then if you want to generate new stuff, there's a plus button here under the navigator where you can add a new type of object. So shader graph I talked about really quickly. Hopefully it's big enough for you to see in the back. So shader graph is a kind of programmatic way of creating a material effect that you would then apply to your object. So here it's basically just a white cube. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is how you create a shader graph to break up, you break the three colors RGB or the X, Y, Z coordinate in this case, and you split them up, apply an effect to them, and then you combine them, and then the blue object over there is sort of the output, right? So all this purple stuff is the things you're using to affect your shader. And like in this particular example, the closer you are to the object, it appears red, and then further away you are, it goes towards green. And so that's why this cube is sort of showing this. And so you can affect things as people move around them, or as you move around the environment. You can use a shader graph to have those kind of special effects. And there's a really good, it's early days, there's not a lot of documentation on this. Mr. Deer Whale is a gentleman named Mark Robinson. He's done some YouTube videos, and he's got some Gumroad filters you can try. It's another slide I'm going to show you in a sec, so you have to take this shot. But he's done some really good work. So he's got YouTube videos, and he's got some of these ready-made shaders you can look at and play with and see how he's put them together. Over there is a link to his, I believe it's his Gumroad page, and as well his Twitter handle. So this is Reality Kit. This is the mind map I built for teaching the Reality Kit course, right? So how deep does this rabbit hole go? Pretty deep. I mean, they all do, really. But for the highlights are basically, you've got materials, you can have models, you've got the model and you've got the 3D, the reality view down there at the bottom. PBR is physics-based rendering. So what physics-based rendering is cool is what's cool about that is one of the things that's cool about visionOS in general is you can add in an image file that will affect how your image or your object is lit within the space, right? But one of the other things that visionOS does is it looks at the color in the room and it applies that to your object. So that's why it looks like it's really in the space. It doesn't look like it's too bright or too dark or whatever. That's the kind of magic behind it. And then without going into too much detail, but entity component system is, an entity is an object you put into your program, and then components are features or effects you apply to that entity. And that's what the ECS is about. And then systems is sort of the underbelly, the magic math that goes on behind the scenes, right? So if I wanted to do a couple of things. One is if I wanted to, I can create an image file and I can apply that as an influence on my objects using an image-based light component, right? And so in this particular example here, and this is covered in the course, I'm loading a file called Sunlight, and then I'm applying it to the thing. Has anybody here seen the Hello World demo that Apple did for WWDC? Well, when you go into the immersive part and you see the Earth, and you have the moon going around and the satellite, that's being lit by one little pixel in a sunlight file. Because the sun is a single point of light, right? So yeah, sorry? Yeah, so that's kind of like, that's how that magically works. So this is the kind of code you would use to load up an image like that. And then you've probably heard of Skybox. Apple's idea behind Skybox and whatever else calls a Skybox is a little different. If I want to have an image, like I want to put the objects in undersea, for example, I want to make it look like it's cloudy and blue colored because it's underwater. I would have an image, and in this case here, named underwater, and I would load it as an entity, and then I would create a sphere, and I would paint the image on the inside of the sphere, right? So this is the trick they do in games where you see the horizon in Mario, you can never get to the horizon no matter how far you drive the car. That's because that's a skybox, right? So you'll never actually reach that image. So you can do the same thing. And so, just for fun, this is from RW DevCom 2013, and this is at the time we were RayWonderlic.com, and these are some of the past and present writers there. Sam here in the middle, he's in charge of IT over there, right? And so Matt Galloway, the guy with the black T-shirt, he shot this picture on a special speedy camera. And I'm actually just for fun recording this talk on 3D, so in the future we can watch it on our Vision Pro, right? And imagine what it was like to be here in the room. So here's an example. So this is the little plane that you already talked about the other day. I used that as an example, but this is the actual image applied. I'm looking at it through my Vision Pro, so it's like I'm surrounded by these guys. I'm a little guy on the table, and there's Matt, right? And it's amazing because like there's even a seam between the other guy's finger there. You don't see the edge of the image. And even if you look at the ceiling tiles, how they're all square. It's amazing technology, right? So that's basically what kind of effect you can do. If you want to create your own like environment, that's how the kind of environments work in visionOS. It's a little different. And then one of the things about working with Reality Kit is if you make a circle or a sphere on the screen and you decide to apply gravity to it, and as soon as you run your app, that sphere is going to fall through the floor because there's nothing to stop it, right? You just watch it go off into infinity. So one of the things you can do here is you can use a bit of code. So you don't have to do everything in Reality Composer Pro. You can have your scene set up there, but you can also apply programmatically, you can create a floor. So here I'm generating a plane, which is basically an image or a model that has no depth, but it has width and height. And here in this case, I'm making a 100-meter wide square. I'm applying it doesn't show here, but yes, it's an occlusion material, which means you don't see it, right? And so when the object I make hits the ground, it doesn't stop. It just stops on the ground and rolls around, right? As opposed to going off into infinity. And then you just use the content.addFloor to add that object. Over there, this is how you would build a ball. Like Satoshi showed this yesterday where he was making those discs, right? So this here, I'm making a ball. I'm applying, I'm saying it is metallic. I'm applying a simple color to it, so it'll be like a gray ball. And then if I want to interact with it, I have to add an input target. So that's what the next line down, and then collision component lets me interact with it in terms of how I want to interact with it. And then adding physics body, whether it has mass, in this case it's 5 kilograms. You know, it has dynamic friction and static friction. Static friction is how little it wants to move. Dynamic friction is how loosely it can move. And restitution is how quickly it comes to a rest, I believe, when you're doing it. And then the mode, in this case dynamic, if I pick up an object with my pinch, right, I want it to be dynamic, and then as soon as I let it go, it goes back to kinetic, and then kinematic, and it drops back down. So this is kind of how you would do it in code. And in Reality Composer Pro, what you do in the inspector is you would create a sphere in Reality Composer Pro, and then you would go in and you would, this is the version that you would do. So rather than having to know how to write all that code, just like Interface Builder, you go in here and you add a collision component, right? And you set oh, I didn't talk about the sphere. So you can create the shape around it. By default, it's a cube, but if it's a ball, you want it to be circular, right, or spherical. And then you can add a physics body, and the physics body determines whether or not it's affected by gravity or not. And again, it's just a checkbox. It's super simple, right? And then for physics motion, you can decide how you want the object to move when you interact with it. And for fun, you can add a grounding shadow so that when you put the ball in the real world, it has a shadow as if it's an object really here, right? And then input target is the important part. If I make a sphere and I put input target on it and I try and tap on it, it's not going to do anything because unless I add that particular to it. So if you looked at the previous slide, I did that in code. Here I just do it by checking off a few boxes, right? Particle emitters are fun too because you can make a particle like smoke or clouds or rocket fire, like you saw earlier that effect I had when it went across the screen. Those are particles, right? And so you have an emitter side where you set how it's kind of the engine that runs the particles. You can set the shape. You can, whether it's running or not, you can have it loop while you're developing it and figuring out the color and the shape and speed. You can have it loop so it runs over time. And then on the particle side, which is the other tab, this is that side over there. You know, I'm using a gray square. I'm applying an orange color to it. You know, I'm adding other properties to it. So it's kind of like, I don't need to know how to code all this stuff because Apple's given me this amazing Reality Composer Pro tool to set this up. So you already talked about this a little bit too. So this is, again, coming back to the workstation. So my dog is asleep under the table right now. And this is my Mac. And I've turned on a debug mode so I can see the edges of things. And I think Vina's going to talk about this too. But as you see, like all the time I've been working with my Vision Pro in my house, my Vision Pro has been mapping the house, right? So I'm walking through the kitchen and I want to go, oh, there's a chair in front of me, I need to move the chair. But it's also, come on, all right. Yeah, so I can move the chair out of the way. So he's even mapped the chairs there, right? Which is kind of cool. And then my dogs go in the backyard and play. Sometimes I have my Vision Pro and I let them out to go do their business, and it maps that too. So it's kind of cool. You can even see if I go down the stairs, you'll see into the basement where I work, you know, where my office is. You can see all that kind of stuff too. So that's kind of neat stuff. So I want to talk about some of the takeaway for this is, oh, I only have a minute left?
Yes, definitely,
go ahead? Okay, all right. So I want to show some of the cool apps like that you can do with this. So this is an example of an interesting application. Not really sure 100% how they did this because we don't have access to some of this stuff. But this is a stockpile. That's what you call it. He's working in a quarry, and he's looking with his Vision Pro. He's just looking at the rocks, right? The pile of rocks. And when he's finished, the application they're using can actually tell them what the volume in yards, cubic yards, how much rock is in that pile. Well, that's cool. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, like businesses that don't exist yet that are going to be coming from this technology, right? And then this is another one where here it's a DeWalt factory. So the tape measure has Bluetooth in it, right? And you can see here he turns the thing and he takes a measurement with it and he pushes send on the tape measure and wait for it. He goes, boom, and it shows up on the window. So it keeps track of all his measurements, and then he's measuring the height. And then he can take this over to you can see the chop saw behind there. He takes it over there, and he can when he cuts the wood, he prints out a barcode, sticks it onto the piece of wood so you know which piece of wood that's for, kind of thing, right? And this is another, NVIDIA Omniverse just released this as well. This is part of a longer video, but here the person is choosing the style of car she wants, and then she wants to see what it's going to look like under different environments. So she can change the environment, and you see how the object changes its environment. And as well, she can also go and she can sit in a chair, and she can render the car around her in her studio. So she's not really in the studio, she's sitting in her office, and she can see what it feels like to be in this car. That's kind of another cool real-world application for this thing, right? And then the last sort of example here, this is a one called Flight Voyager, for Flight Voyager. A friend of mine recommended it, and it's kind of like, it's interesting because you can, this is Toronto Airport. You can do Beijing Airport. You can pull up any airport in the world, and the traffic is available 24/7 in real time. So in real time, these are the planes that were landing when I made this video, right? And I can, again, I can open up attachments. I can see, their airspeed. I can see their height. I can interact with the planes. I can take the whole world and I can spin it. Again, this is in my kitchen, right? And yeah, you can interact with these objects. It's kind of cool. So, do we have like 5 minutes for quick demos? Okay. All right. So. I'm gonna use the Laval mic. Yeah, because this is the end of my talk anyway. So, okay. So here is. I like to wear my Vision Pro lower than that. Okay. Oh, is this not mirroring, right? Hang on. Let me do this one. Oh, there's too many Macs in the room now. Oh, that one. Okay, so you see this? Hang on, technical difficulty. Okay. I can see it on the screen here, but I don't see it on the. Let me just stop for a sec. Oh wait, hang on. Okay, I think I know why. Let's try this. It's a privacy thing. Let's try. No, not that one. There we go.
Did you mirror the video source to its extended display or?
Oh. Maybe, do I have to exit the other application?
Yeah, I think it should work. Yeah, it works.
Okay, cool. All right, real quick. So I just want to do it here. So one of the things that one of the other speakers was talking about was that when you make an object in real world. So I was creating the tutorial before I had the Vision Pro device, and I made a 10-centimeter circle. And you can see that this ball is much bigger than I anticipated it was going to be, right? So here you can see there's the attachment on the thing, and you can see it's amazing how the ball picks up the environment lighting, right? And if I take this and I just pinch it, and I can tilt, and this is what you learn to do in the course. It's very, very exciting. But, so that's an example of that. And then just the other things, so that was all done in Reality Kit, and this one here is done in Reality Composer Pro. So you guys are familiar with Harry Potter, right? So this is a Quidditch hoop, and I have a quaffle, and hopefully the audio is going to work. And I pinch, and I get. So that's, okay, cool. And then, yeah, so once again, reminder about you probably took a picture already of this one, but we have 20% off the boot camp, and then we have 5 chances to win 1 month. Resources, this is the way you get your camera out. This is, what is this? This is Sketchfab is one of the ones. That's where I got the free object. Quick Look is something that I think you already talked about the other day, where you can go on Apple and get, so that's where the plane comes from. And of course, the Apple Developer app, I used to work for a company that was involved in that, so That's my shameless self-promotion. And then finally, this is me. So everybody take your camera out and take a picture. I'm an iOS developer for about 14 years. I'm now officially a visionOS engineer. I actually got a paid job to do it, so I can say that. I'm the subject matter expert at Codico on this. I've been doing it more than just code, MTJC, for 10 years. Yeah. And then that's my link bio with all the stuff, and over there is a link, the QR code for my podcast if you want to follow. And then, I got this quote from Kara Fisher, her book called Burn Book, which is out right now. I'll leave you to your own devices. I don't know how that translates into Chinese. It means I give you the advice and you take it and you do what you want with it. But you're also using your devices.
机会都给你了，这个怎么出现就看各位造化。
Thank you very much.